Hello, hi, my name is Kylan Echo, and we're gonna go ahead and go over Nobara. Now, you can load this into stuff like Fedora Media Writer, Rufus, Balena Etcher as well, but they recommend that you use Ventoy for this one. So now that we have Nobara loaded up finally, it wouldn't work through Ventoy for whatever reason, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. We are officially in Nobara. Now, Nobara is a derivative of Fedora 42. However, it has optimized defaults. I would say it's a little bit harder to use than Pika OS, but it does still give you a lot of the things that you would want. So we're gonna go ahead and go through the installer, and we're gonna go ahead and just do some things. Go ahead and set my passwords. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the time tech. We're gonna erase the disk. Gonna go ahead and put it on Better FS for now. Go ahead and install it. The thing about Nobara is one of those distributions that are great. However, I do have personal issues with it. Creator Glorious Egg Roll ends up making the distribution and it's really good, but every time there's a major update, for some reason, something breaks it. I'm not sure as to why that happens. I'm not sure as to how that even gets mitigated, but something does in fact break in it. Now, I do hope, down the line that there could be a little bit more perfection for it. It's not a bad distribution at all once things are working correctly. But as it stands right now, Nobara does have these issues every once in a while. Now, Nobara isn't a bad distribution to use. Anybody can still use it. I even used it once before. And I'm pretty certain after a while, once they go ahead and, fix any problems that they might have, they may as well also be able to be an even better distribution than they are. It's still one of the top distributions to use, but I'm not going to say it's immediately a beginner distro. It's more or less it's more or less beginner to moderate at the very least, from what I'm currently seeing here. But it is a good distribution, and there's a lot of good things about it. It's actually, by the same person who made GE Proton, because it's the same person who made the distribution. And this distribution isn't bad. This distribution also still has, I think, Xorg and 32-bit support, but I need to check that whenever we get to that point. Even if it doesn't, it still offers a bunch of things that other distributions may not. Especially if you're trying to switch to a distribution to just use it and not really mess with it too much. There is another distribution that is sort of like Nobara, but it's immutable, and it's called Bazite. Bazite is more or less just a glorified gaming OS, but you can still use it to stream on. In the same vein, you can do that with SteamOS, which at some point, I do want to cover both of those at some point. But for now, we're just going to be covering Nobara. At least this isn't going to be a bad situation to where I try to run Gen 2 and Gen 2 doesn't want to work, or Gen 2 takes too long to go through their documentation. I do believe Gen 2 needs to update their documentation, or at least make it to where there's at least a simple installer to sort of unify everything. That way it's more of an appealing distribution to use. There are still, and still include the long way of doing it, but I do think that it needs to be more appealing than what it currently is. There are other attempts at making it simpler, but there's a reason as to why I just could not continue to try to make the Gen 2 video. But we're at least making the Nobara video, because Nobara is also a distribution that I wanted to go over. In the future, if something changes with Gen 2, or if there's a derivative of Gen 2, I will check it out. But for now, we're going to go ahead and check out Nobara, among other distros that I might be interested in. But yeah, this is going to be installing. I do know of a VTuber that does use this distribution. Their name is Rogue Ren, and it does pretty good with them. They know this distribution like a lot, pretty good. You can also go to Nobara. You can also go to Glorious Egg Roll's Discord, where they have Nobara, where you can also get more insight on how to even be able to use the distribution if you are stuck on anything. But out the gate, it will be as simple to use, if not almost as simple as using Pika OS. but there are some caveats to that because it doesn't really include every single thing that you might want out the box, but it does include a lot of the core functionality that you would need as far as like optimized defaults go. So basically, when you're like trying to run software, trying to run VTubing applications, and even OBS, it comes with OBS. I'm pretty sure it comes with Steam. It comes with some video editing software. You can install Flatpak to it, I believe. Like you could do a bunch of things with that OS as well. So it's pretty good. But we're gonna go ahead and go through everything today for this. But if you're going to try doing this, if Ventoy isn't working out, go ahead and try to use something like Balena Etcher, Fedora Media Writer. Maybe if you're on Linux already and you're trying to switch, maybe use the terminal. You may have an opportunity to use Rufus if you're trying to switch from Windows to Linux, or if you have a Mac OS way of doing it, there's also a similar way of getting that done. But you know, as it stands right now, people need to basically what people need to do is people need to start looking into Linux distributions, even if you're currently on Linux, because some distributions sort of die out. Some distributions, you know, something happens with them and you decided that you wanted to change it. And, you know, in the Windows case, they keep shooting themselves in the foot so much that it's becoming not as appealing to use Windows in comparison to using a Linux distro. I would know this. I've been on Linux for only about over a year now, but I was on Windows for about a good 7-8 years, like consistently. So like, it was definitely an adjustment at the start, but it's not that hard to learn if you are using an easier to use distribution. You need to use something that is more accessible to you. Accessibility is definitely something that I do like. That's the reason as to why I went ahead and did videos over stuff like OpenSUSE, stuff like Pika OS, Linux Mint, NixOS, because they all offer their own versions of accessibility options. Even if NixOS is a little bit more on the harder side to start out with, you can still benefit from using it after you get everything set up. Even with that included config file even with that included config file in the guide. And the reason as to why I'm talking about a bunch of things right now is because Nobara is installing. It's taking it a bit, so I kind of just want to talk about some things, especially when it comes to Linux. There is sort of a thing that is, you know, bothering me, and I do need to make either a video or I might end up start talking a little bit about it here. I understand this is an Nobara video, but if you care any at all about your privacy and you want to take the first step of your privacy, and you want to take the first step of trying to at least own your computer, own your distribution, own using your hardware in a better degree than what Windows can offer, and in some cases Mac OS, go ahead and switch to a Linux distribution. That is the first step you can do to help mitigate any sort of issues. Not to mention, like Mac OS, there isn't many viruses for Linux either. And any of the viruses that would be for Linux, all the vulnerabilities are usually patched out. Now, that's not saying it's perfect, because there are always new viruses being made for every little single OS out there, except maybe the ones that are not really well known. Regardless, you should still at least be given the option to use your distribution or use your OS to its fullest extent. Yeah, there are elephants in the room to where you can't play certain anti-cheat games. This is true on all OSs until they find a perfect solution for it. And I can guarantee you they're going to find a solution for it, other than begging the developers to go ahead and enable Proton through easy anti-cheat. A lot of these developers seem to have the notion that people are going to cheat online with Linux, but that's not the case, because in the situation that we're currently in right now, and there might be a change in November, there's going to be like a huge influx of people either moving from Windows to Mac OS or Linux, and you know, or they might stay on 10 for as long as they can. But basically what's going to end up happening is, you know, things are going to change. And hopefully these developers are going to start enabling things for like the, you know, Linux and the Steam Deck. because if anything, it's probably the best case scenario for a lot of things that you want to use online anyways. Some people might try to argue, well, Linux doesn't offer you privacy as much as you would think it would. Well, it actually does, to the extent that it is not super popular right now, especially on some distributions. Now, there are some distributions that are super popular, like Bakelite and Linux Mint, because right now those are the two top distros that people are using right now, at least the average person switching from Windows to Linux whenever they're trying it out. But there's no point in trying to delegitimize any of that stuff either, because yeah, you know, there might be issues, there might be things that you might have to, you know, go through with like Proton DB. You might have to use something like, are we anti-cheat yet, to see if your game even runs on Linux, or if it can run through the anti-cheat. You know, there is no guarantee that it's going to work, but in theory they all do work, and it's basically just down to the developer. Like Proton has gotten to the point to where basically all the games do work. Now the 5% of games that don't are on Are We Anti-Cheat Yet, or they're games that were like completely borked by the developer because of how they were created. But it's not much at all, really. You can find ways to run these all the time, right? So I don't really see where it's like a super big problem or a super big issue at this time, because I could play most, if not all, of my games. There's very few games I have issues that I cannot run, and that's just usually the games with the anti-cheat, and that's just basically what it boils down to. Now, if down the line, if they go ahead and start making a Linux kernel specifically for certain anti-cheats, then that would probably be the best case scenario for some people, because then they can, like, if they have a 2PC setup, they can kind of like, run their existing setup the way they want to when they're streaming. Oh, that jumped up really a lot. And they can also switch to the other Linux kernel to allow it to run those games, perfectly. But the main thing that people are having that issue with, and I think Brody went over and made a video on it recently as well, is that, like, you can't really trust that to happen, because there's a possibility of somebody going in to spoof what the kernel would be, and then it can create a whole bunch of other issues. But when it really boils down to it, I don't think there's that many Linux cheaters anyways. It's, in comparison, it's just mainly Windows users spoofing themselves as Linux to be able to run anti-cheat games. Or at least be able to cheat in anti-cheat games and then saying it's Linux fault. Which, that's basically the best case scenario for a lot of things. I doubt people who are running Linux very ethically are not going to have that issue. There's like a bunch of games that do work on Linux, like Marvel Rivals will work on Linux, Smite will work on Linux. Like, there's a whole bunch of games that do work. That's just the thing. Like, there are games that will work and there are games that do work, and there are games that won't work at all. That's just the case, with a lot of things. But I don't really have that issue with a lot of these problems on here. Some developers are even making Linux versions of their games in case something else happens. One of the other fears is the fact that, Windows 11 can't be installed on the majority of systems nowadays, because there's a lot of people who are still on their old computers. They haven't went out of their way to go buy a computer that's specifically compatible with Windows 11, because prices of everything all over the world has gone up. And the only real way to really get a computer going is if you save your money up, you build your computer, and you may get a decent computer, but I can't really guarantee if you're going to get the best computer out there. Like, both of my computers, they're decent. They're okay. They're not the best computers, but they do run every little single thing that I want to run. My streaming computer runs all my streaming stuff. It runs it just fine. It is literally the bare minimum to run everything on here without having a lot of problems. And the same thing with my gaming computer. It's literally the bare minimum of what I can run with a lot of games without a lot of issues. It's the reason why I usually recommend dual computer setups for a lot of people. But, and I'm just going to say this, but a lot of people tend to have problems whenever they are trying to specifically try to run some things, like with certain OSs, and they have to switch to a different OS, either because they run into a problem due to skill issues, or they run into problems due to actual issues or incompatibilities with the hardware, which with Linux, that's not very often that happens, but it can happen. I noticed it was, before it would have happened with some graphics cards until there was an update to the kernel So you always want to make sure of a lot of things when you are running your computers. That you want to make sure that if you know how to do it and your computer has an easy flash BIOS, basically what the easy flash BIOS with computers nowadays, if you're building one, is say the BIOS corrupts on your computer, well, you have a button you can press when you boot your computer up that will actually revert it back to the last known BIOS that was working before that. That way you can save your computer. We're going to go ahead and restart Nobara. But once you go ahead and do that, then what's going to end up happening is, you know, you're going to have all your up-to-date hardware. I had to update both of the BIOSes to my computers just to ensure that any of the newer kernels that were going to run on it were going to be running on it fine, or running on it without issues. Which that's fine. You know, it's not really a problem. Definitely works for what it's worth. You also want to make sure you're on the most recent kernels for basically anything, if depending on what your hardware supports and depending on what you're using, especially if you're trying to get other things to work. The hell? Whoa! Okay, we're gonna boot Nobara up. I had to like reset the computer because it was fucking weird. But yeah, Nobara's gonna end up being loaded up pretty soon. And we're gonna be able to go ahead and start looking into what Nobara is offering. But of course, I had my opinions on certain things, and I may have talked to this before on the stream and a whole bunch of other things as well. But we're gonna go ahead and start Nobara. And we're going to go ahead and go through the steps of getting everything to work. Welcome to Nobara Linux. Thank you for choosing Nobara. The welcome screen will help guide you through the stuff. So this is a very similar setup to what Pika OS offered. You will end up getting some stuff to get everything updated. So let's go ahead and update the system first. That is the very first thing you want to do. It's the very first thing that you want to do when it comes to your distribution of choice. Now, the way Nobara updates things, it's a little bit different. But the thing is, you want to make sure this updates completely. Same thing whenever you're like running a distribution like Bazite as well. So, I'm gonna go ahead and, oh shit, I'm gonna let this all update. Now, like the experience of trying to install Nobara in comparison to installing a distribution like Gen 2 is don't install Gen 2 until they make a distribution that's really easy to use, that it's actually not in beta. I tried to also install Calc Linux, but Calc Linux did not work. I'm not sure as to why it just refused to boot or do anything it wanted to do. I tried to use Argent Linux for Gen 2 as well. That also caused significant issues due to the fact that it just did not want to, you know, associate anything with OBS being installed. Because like the programs worked. The programs worked just fine. The drivers worked just fine in it. But OBS was having its problems. And there isn't really any other distribution out there that can really solve this problem. There might be a situation where Xena Linux might work, but that's also an immutable distro. So there might be that at the very least, but there isn't very many gaming-centric distros for Gen 2, even in theory if most of the games will run better on Gen 2. I've seen posts saying that games typically run a little bit better on Gen 2 because Gen 2 is more of a lighter weight distribution, and it's also sort of more for people who want to move from Arch to a different distribution that might be a little bit better for them. But for stuff like Nobara falls into the category of a gaming distribution or an easier to use content creator distribution. And in the same vein that Pika OS does, the same vein that Linux Mint does, the same vein that, you know, even OpenSUSE does. NixOS is basically just dependent on how you want to run the system, but you could still do a lot of things with NixOS. That is a thing that you can absolutely do. You You can do a lot of things with it. But while you're trying to get everything updated and installed, make sure you get yourself like a cup of coffee, you know, snack on something to like, you know, be able to like enjoy while you're waiting. It's gonna take a bit for it to update everything. And it also comes with Flatpak. We can actually look at a bunch of things. So it's actually incorporating a bunch of things that Pika OS has, which is really good. At least in the most recent version of Nobara. Comes with Falcon D, Fast Fetch, Flatpak, Game Scope, Input Plumber. It's got KDE stuff, got kernel stuff, Mango HUD. It's got a bunch of things going on. It's basically taking what's, you know, what was working with Pika OS and actually making it work on Nobara too. Got Wine HQ, Umu's on here as well. Of course, Fedora. So yeah, we got a bunch of these packages. You know, you're gonna use the Dolphin file manager. Ghost script, like this is gonna, it comes with GStreamer stuff because Nobara, you know, GE Proton, Glorious Egg Roll, ended up doing videos on that. But overall, like, it's still a good distribution. I mean, if these distributions weren't good, they wouldn't have people using them. And you might be like, okay, you know, 6% of people using, you know, Linux isn't a lot, but actually, it's actually quite a bit. 6% is actually a huge number in comparison to, like, you know, like, in comparison to, like, a lot of other things. Like, 6% of people using a distribution, or 6% of people, like, using Linux in general, is what I meant to say. It's more like, oh, it does have Xorg. And it's not bad. And it's only gonna get, it's only gonna become more relevant later on when people start to get interested in using Linux. Because Linux isn't like the situation where people think that you're editing INI files all day. You could very much recommend Linux for gaming. Because there's going to be people who are just going to get tired of their computer crashing. They're going to get tired of a lot of things, really. And it's going to suck. You know, it's going to absolutely suck when it comes to trying to, you know, getting things to work correctly. There's even some VTubers or some streamers I know who will use a Windows computer for gaming for now, at least, and then they will stream off Linux, because Linux is very stable when it comes to streaming. It's actually more stable than Windows is at the moment. If, you know, and one of the key things on why people want stability over an OS that tries to shoehorn in AI, an OS that tries to shoehorn in stuff like Windows Recall, especially when the stuff isn't encrypted, especially when now we're currently in a day and age to where they're wanting to do ID verification, they're wanting to snoop and look at people's computers, they're wanting to do a whole bunch of things all over the world to try to get people, you know, controlled in a way to where they just can't really use what they want. And it really fucking sucks. Like, I'd hate to live in a world where Linux was be banned, because it just wouldn't be right, you know? Now, I do feel like if that ever did happen, if Linux got banned, the only distributions that would be allowed would be like Ubuntu, or like big name, like Ubuntu, maybe Arch, maybe Fedora. Like, it'd probably just be limited to those three at that point. Everything else probably would get banned. Which would be fucking stupid, because a lot of corporations use Kali Linux, Red Hat uses their own distribution. I don't think this in any way, shape, or form would be banned or should be banned, because there's a lot of, like, even companies that use Linux to even operate their airports. Because whenever the CrowdStrike issue happened, I noticed a bunch of airports switching from Windows to Linux. Because Linux, you know, even though Linux can use CrowdStrike, you got to understand that Linux is far more capable of not just randomly fucking crashing on you than Windows is. Windows will crash on you if you install an AMD GPU into your system, or you have an AMD CPU, it will start crashing. You will get random ass blue screen of deaths, or in this case, they're getting rid of the blue screen of death. They're just gonna do whatever the fuck they want at that point. Purple screen or fucking green screen, who cares, right? They're still gonna have some sort of notification that something died on your computer. It's gonna restart the entire computer. Or let's say you're trying to update your computer and you want to be able to actually have a functioning desktop. Well, you're gonna be forced to restart. There's even been situations where when I used to use Windows, I had all the updates disabled. Well, Microsoft eventually, after a while, you know, especially if you're signed into a Microsoft account, because they can 100% do this. This has happened to me before. They can re-enable your updates without you even wanting to have them re-enabled. They could force an update on your system if they wanted to. You turning that stuff off is only a temporary solution to an existing problem. The only way to really solve a solution like that is if you get some sort of third-party software. And I'll be honest, a lot of people who are not power users or people who, you know, don't daily drive or use their computer might have that problem. I think it's still updating the packages. Yes, it's performing tasks still. So, like, if you're gonna continue to, like, at the very least, have a computer that's usable and you want to make sure you're not running into, like, a lot of issues, I still recommend using Linux because it's not gonna really deter me from that. Like, eventually, Windows is gonna go to a paid subscription platform. You're gonna have to pay to use your OS. And this isn't like a one-time payment, right? Because Microsoft sees a lot of drop-offs. They may be even seeing some sort of deficit when people just don't even pay for their Windows installation. They might install it for free and then just run a code to kind of get rid of that watermark. That way they can use your computer normally. Well, considering Microsoft, and considering how they operate, I could see them and there's been reports on it. And you know, when it actually happens, it's gonna be completely fucked for a lot of Windows users. It's gonna cause people to not want to use Windows at that point. We're gonna go ahead and reboot. It's gonna cause people not to want to use Windows at that point, because imagine you just bought all your PC parts, right? You don't have the money to really install like anything else really, and you know, you don't have the money to like pay for a subscription. Let's say you spent like $1,000 on your computer, you want to install an OS, but you don't want to pay for a Windows license. Your options would be to either install Linux or to use an older Windows operating system that may or may not still be supported. And Windows 11 is definitely headed that way. And launch the driver manager just to make sure. Okay, so this is the same driver manager that Pika OS uses, which is really cool. That's good. So we got all the drivers there. There is a tweak tool we can go ahead and launch. So this will allow you to mount your existing partitions. This is their answer to GNOME disks. In Pika OS, I use GNOME disks because it's just a really easy thing to use. But in this, Nobara has a tweak tool to allow you to mount another drive to your computer. But we're not doing that for this one. We can go ahead and also install apps as well. And this will go ahead and let you take a look at their packaging and their repository system to be able to, at the very least, download any sort of, you know, packages you want from regular, you know, you can even update your system from here too, I think. There's also web apps. Let's go and click on recommended additions. So you can install Blender, you can install Kdenlive. We're gonna go ahead and install OBS. OBS will go ahead and just start installing. This is the main thing a lot of streamers use nowadays. So if you're gonna be using Nobara on your computer, you can definitely use this. Alright, so that's installed. Hit OK. Now we can go to optional steps, which we can also check here if there's nothing else here. Go to optional steps. Now you have the option of using a DaVinci Resolve. Now, with DaVinci Resolve, you can get it for free. However, if you want the codecs, you need to pay for the studio version. What I really recommend if you're going to do video editing on Nobara or any distribution is you use Kdenlive. I do have a list of video editors that you could potentially use as well on the guide, but Kdenlive has been known to be the better of the options. So we're also going to go ahead and grab in Proton GE. And it's actually already installed. Dude, Steam, Lutris, Bottles, or Heroic Games Launcher to get started. And you might be wondering, hey, where's the installer for Steam? Glad you asked. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. You go to your start menu and you click on games. Steam will already be here. You can actually add that to your desktop. You can add Proton Plus to your desktop. We can actually go to the store as well. Which apparently Nobara is using a thing called Flatpost, which might be what is replacing Discover. You might also notice Nobara doesn't use Firefox. Nobara uses the Brave browser. So while we're at it, we're gonna go ahead and just open up the Brave browser while this is getting pulled up. We're gonna need things from that. Go ahead and just now KDE Wallet might ask you for password. You can go ahead and just put that in for now. You can always get rid of this later on. But you're gonna have Brave browser open. We're gonna go ahead and go to the Linux Guide to Vtubing. And it will be one of the first things that you see. And we're gonna go ahead and just grab Vtube Mini. Grab the Linux version of Vtube Mini. Try that again. Not sure why that crashed. I'm gonna go ahead and save this in downloads. We're also gonna grab VC Face. The reason why I grab these programs every time I do one of these is because it helps show you an idea of getting 3D programs to work. You can use VNeon, you can use Warudo. They may or may not have memory leaks. There's also another program that I need to add to the guide that I've became known recently about. But these are basically the de facto programs you want to start using. So we already have these installed. Let's just go and close that out. Let's also go ahead and grab, while we're at it, the IP config file. The easiest way to find it is to go ahead and click on the file name, download the zip file, save, and we now have that as well. So now basically we have everything we need for that. We're gonna go ahead and keep this open because I do believe Nobara also supports game capture because it's more updated beginner distros. Now, Flatpost is a different kind of manager when it comes to pulling up flat packs from FlatHub. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and grab models, install that. And this makes it super easy to install everything. We're also going to go ahead and just wait for it to install. There's nothing I can do about that. In the meantime, we are going to start Steam. And while we're at it, we can actually go ahead and go to the downloads folder and extract all of these. Because they'll be all extracted into their own folders. Now, there are some things we're going to have to get. So bottles got installed. Let's go ahead and grab Face Tracker. Face Tracker will be here as well. Hit install. Install. It's going to install it to the user. If you want, you can install these to the system, but I would just go ahead and just go to the default system setting. So we basically have what we need for this, and that is good. If you want to actually, look through this, you can. There's a lot of programs that are really cool that you can pull up. well as all of the ways of getting this done. This does seem like it is in its infancy, and you can also grab DuckStation as well, but that's besides the point. So now we can go ahead and log into our Steam account. So I'm going to go ahead and just log into the Steam account. I'm going to sign into Steam. Gonna go ahead and load the user data. Now this is more optimized for Steam because this is an optimized gaming distribution, so everything is going to work a little bit better out of the box in comparison to other distributions, because this is like a first time kind of run. Grab Vtube Studio, go ahead and install it, and it's going to go ahead and just install Vtube Studio for you. While we're at that, we're going to go ahead and pull up OBS. And since we have OBS Studio pulled up, it's going to actually have a couple things already pre-installed into it, which will then make everything work pretty good. So say next on this. Now, this does come with the vertical. This does come with some pre-installed stuff. So you have ATM, got vertical scenes, vertical sources. It's actually really good for when you're starting out streaming and when you're doing stuff like that. And honestly, I mean, if it keeps going, I might end up switching my streaming computer to Nobara. It seems like it's doing it pretty well. But of course, that's going to depend on a lot of other things too. But let's go ahead and try to make this a little bit easier to see. But it does include vertical sources out of the box. If I go and click plus, there's actually going to be an option for screen captures. And I know screen capture is going to work because if I go to option selector, you can see the little screens here. You can see the little windows here. So this is on Wayland. Wayland does have support for a lot of things. Let's see here. Settings. It's curious. Stream key. So you can put your stream key in here. It should allow you to also be able to log in. I believe for YouTube as well. Basically, you can put all your stuff in here, which is pretty good. You're going to be given a lot of options as well. I mean, what I basically like to use when it comes to streaming is I like the Acri style things. May it apply to that, okay? Basically, how I like to get things going. I'm going to go and just remove this for now. Game capture should also be on here. So that's basically something that we want to have. We're going to disallow transparency. We can go ahead and, keep that in mind at least for now, because game capture will end up working. This is one of those distributions that, once things are working correctly and they're working out of the box and they're working pretty good, they're going to work for a very long time, unless Glorious April decides to break the OS. That's besides the point. There's always a way to make it work. It always does work out of the box. Honestly, I mean, it's one of the distributions that makes things just work out of the box, basically, because you're given a lot of things out of the box too, and this is basically very much warranted when it comes to doing that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up. I'm gonna go ahead and validate all the files for Vtube Studio. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and go to this. We're gonna click on the cog, go to properties. We're going to click on compatibility. We're going to change it to Proton 9. It's the one that works the best with this for now. And, you can go through all this stuff here. There's betas. You can go on older offline versions of Vtube Studio if you have issues. So say there's an update that you don't like, or there's an update that's having a problem. Well, you can actually just click on one of the older ones if you want, which is a really good thing that they have included. Outside of that, what I'm going to go ahead and do, since I have a lot of confidence that this will work, we're going to go ahead and just launch it with Game Capture installed. Because Game Capture is guaranteed to work on Nobara. It works just as good as it does on Pika OS. And it's definitely one of those distributions that can, help you get things working correctly. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up. Go to the Vtube Studio section of the guide. We're gonna grab the OBS game capture %. This is the command that seems to work the best. Eventually, one of these days, I do hope that we don't ever have to use launch options like this, and things can just kind of work better than that. But, beggars can't be choosers on a lot of things, and especially when you're trying to get things to work. Now, for Vtube Studio, you're gonna want to go to your download. You're gonna want to go to your installed files. You're gonna want to click on Vtube Studio data, streaming assets. You're gonna want to get to this folder. Go to where you have extracted the IP config file and drop it into the streaming assets folder. And now we have that in there. So now what we're gonna do is you're gonna hook up your webcam and you're going to start up Face Tracker. Face Tracker is one of those programs that seem to work with Vtube Studio the best, and VC Face the best as well. It's going to start that, and it's going to go ahead and start piping the data to VC Face whenever it sees fit. Now we're going to go ahead and close out a couple windows here because I just want to make sure there's not too much of a clutter going on. I'm going to go ahead and launch Vtube Studio. And it's going to go ahead and start downloading the content. It's going to start downloading everything it needs to get it to work. But this will work. This is going to be guaranteed to work. Okay, so now you're going to be hit with the unregistered mappers. These things are nothing to really worry about. This is mainly stuff that you use for like video capture. Now for Linux users, at least for now, until there's some sort of fix for this, I'm not sure as to why we can't use the built-in video capture thing for like virtual cameras. I'm not sure why we can't use virtual cameras for that, at least for now. Everything else seems to work. I mean, if I'm using a virtual camera, I'm opening up OBS anyways, but some people might not want to do that, which I do understand. But we're working with like in a limited space to get things working. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a VTuber model. Okay. And we're actually gonna go ahead and start looking for another VTuber model because this would be the best case scenario. So we're gonna go ahead and grab the items. Steam Workshop, hit OK, download model. Okay, select, search. We're just gonna grab a random VTuber model off the Steam Workshop because I just want to choose a different one. And Steam Workshop does work. So we can actually double click. Oh, we've done this. Go ahead and click on change VTS model. Click on where it says the new VTuber model you just downloaded, or you can use one of the existing ones. Now we have Ferris from, I think, Fate or something. So now we have this person here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually hit Alt-Enter. Do you want to make sure this isn't a window? Because I want to be able to actually see the game capture, which it does work automatically in Nobara. So if you're going to use something like out of the gate and you want to get something like working, Nobara is a solid choice to get this to work for VTubing. And eventually we're going to go ahead and start getting the transparent and capture stuff to work too. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to Vtube Studio. We're going to go ahead and click on the background selector, click on color picker, hit select. We're going to make sure it's allowing transparency. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not sure as to why this popped up, but me. Go back to the color picker because that wasn't supposed to happen. Hit select, transparent and capture. And now, since this is now transparent and capture, go back to OBS, we can kind of just move them around. And since we have this character here, pretty good. So yes, this does work. And I'm going to go ahead and enable the video capture or the video camera settings now. Click on settings, click on that, click camera on, calibrate. Now, that works. You can also like, unify the eye blinking as well. Works. That's good. So now we have this working here. This does seem to work a lot. At least it works pretty good for what it's worth, at least. Because now we can actually see the VTuber model moving around. And that's basically it for Live 2D. Because if Live 2D seems to be working pretty well. And of course, like if you're doing like VTuber stuff, you can always of course show your model off. I'm not sure if this has any toggles or anything, but yeah, you could definitely see this is working. Of course, the eye blinking is different because the laptop is angled a different way than what I currently have, but it does work. So we're pretty much done with Vtube Studio for now. Now let's load up one of those other programs. So we can keep the game capture open here for now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the files. I'm going to go to downloads. We're going to actually click on VC Face. And with VC Face, we can do a number of things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up Bottles. We're going to run this through Bottles. This Bottles seems to be one of the easier ways of doing this. Because you can create a bottle, you can then go ahead and add the program to the bottle, and you can go ahead and also run it with launch options. Go ahead and just go here, hit continue, wait for it to complete its, action of getting things done. Alright, and we can start using bottles. So when you're using bottles, you're going to go ahead and create the bottle, click on gaming, and you can actually just keep it on like system wine. We can go ahead and click, type in VC Face. Like this may work on the Fogus launcher, this may work on Luitris, this may work on a lot of other launchers, but it's been known to work on bottles the best, in my opinion. Add a game. Non-Steam game. Browse, grab VC Face and open programs, look for VC Face, pretty sure it's just going to be the installed things. Go ahead and go here, properties, launch options, put your launch options there. Compatibility, run this under Proton, Experimental, or Proton 9. Both of them work. Hit play. This will launch just fine, at least under that. I'm not sure why the other program's having issues. Sure somebody could figure that out at some point, or not sure why, but this will just start mirror motion, and now this is going to go ahead and communicate with this correctly. And I believe if I go here, yeah, we're going to have the game capture working just fine through Steam. Again, I'm not sure as to why it's having issues with the Fogus launcher. It might be because it's having issues trying to access the file system because it is a Flatpak, but there are ways to get around that by using FlatSeal. For the purpose of this video, we just need to see if that works. It does in fact work. So now we're done with that. Let's go ahead and just remove game capture for now. Go ahead and close all this stuff out here. And try the final thing, which would be loading up the app image for Vtube Mini. All we gotta do is double click, hit launch, and it will load up just fine. So now this happens to load up, and for some reason the mic is just screaming, but it seems to be working just fine. So let's go ahead and just add a window capture device. Now if you are on Wayland, you're gonna click on screen capture, hit OK, Windows, Vtube Mini, hit OK. Now we are in Wayland. Or at least we've been in Wayland the entire time. But we're gonna go ahead and click on filters, start, chroma key, and we're gonna go ahead and adjust the similarity to make sure the green screen makes sense. Close. And now we have a perfectly working PNG tuber working. And yeah, this does happen to work pretty decently out of the box. It does have its own little set of problems, you know, trying to run certain programs like through the Fogus launcher or through bottles, but that might either be user error or that might end up just be, you know, based on permissions. I'm pretty certain you can get it working. In this situation, I'm not sure what's going on with the OS in general, but everything does seem to launch either natively or it happens to launch through Steam, which is fine. You can run multiple things through Steam at a time. You can run a program in a game if you want. It happens. It can work that way. But this does happen to work, and I can say I can recommend this. But yeah, basically what I could pretty much say about Nobara is, yeah, Nobara is something I can recommend. Nobara is an OS that you can run and get everything done with. If you are wanting to get a Fedora-based distribution that gives you everything out of the box and gives you everything that you really need out of the box as far as Vtubing goes, and as far as being able to play your games and getting everything running, as well as being given the option of running additional applications, I'd go ahead and recommend Nobara. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you want to support me, you can go ahead and go to the Ko-Fi page. I will be moving in 2 months. I definitely need the support as much as possible to be able to help additionally prepare with it, along with everything else that's going on in my life. So yeah, I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that as well, because I will be moving in about November. There may not be a video in December, or at least the first couple weeks of December. I do try to get videos out as much as I can, but it does seem that I am, you know, eventually getting videos out every now and then. So I hope you enjoy the video. If you do like it, like, comment, and subscribe, and you know where to find me on my socials, on Twitch, Twitter, Blue Sky, and more. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Bye!